Welcome to day 9 of the 12 Days of Command. Today I'll be introducing you to the Opportunities applet, which is where you'll manage all of your transactions. To get to your Opportunities applet, you're going to click on the handshake icon on the left-hand side toolbar. Again, if you click that KW at the top, it does expand this menu. This will bring you into your Opportunities dashboard, and this is where you're going to track all of your potential, current, and past transactions. You'll see at the top, you'll have a tab with your name on it, which is all of your opportunities in this pipeline view, we call it, so it's a little bit more visual and laid out. But you can also click on all opportunities to see all of your transactions in a list view and be able to filter them from here. So those are your two views to actually see your opportunities. If you're on a team, you'll have your team name as a tab here as well, and also your discussions as a tab. So if you are on a team, you'll probably want to be on your team tab when you're creating those opportunities. Just check with the rainmaker of your team to make sure that that's the process for how your team operates. So we're going to look at these two tabs right here. This one with your name on it is the pipeline view of all of your transactions. And so it looks like this. And then the All Opportunities button will bring you to a list view of your opportunities. So just two different ways to see it, however works better for your brain. But I find the one with your name is just a lot more visual. So as we go down on the page, of course, we have our Create Opportunity button here at the top when we actually need to create the transaction, and I am going to run through the process of doing that. But before we go into that, I want to talk about these pipelines. So you have two separate pipelines in your command account, one for listings and one for buyers. So it just keeps them separate and nice and organized. And you will also notice a third pipeline for leases, but we don't do that here in our market. So you can ignore that. We're just going to look at listings and buyers. So each pipeline has 5 phases. We have cultivate, appointment, active, under contract, and closed. And if you think of the life cycle of a transaction, it follows along with that pretty closely. So the first phase here is cultivate, and that is just when you're cultivating the relationship with that person. So the first phase here is cultivate, and that is your potential transactions. As soon as someone mentions real estate or that they are thinking of buying or thinking of selling, that is a good time to create an opportunity for that person because it is a potential transaction if you're following up with them, and then putting it into this cultivate phase. Again, it's just reminding us that we have relationships here to cultivate and then hopefully move them throughout the pipeline. So once that person calls you and says, okay, I'm ready to list my house now, you would simply move the opportunity into the appointment phase. Then once that listing is ready to go active, you're going to move the opportunity to the active phase. Once you get an accepted offer, it would go to under contract, and then once it closes, you'll move it to closed. Same thing down on the buyers. Of course, we have cultivate, appointment, active, under contract, and closed. And essentially, appointment is going to be once you have that buyer consultation. And then once they're actually an active buyer and out looking for properties, you would move them to active. As you're tracking your opportunities through the pipeline, you'll notice over on the right-hand side, we have some different income numbers that are being generated here. So first is potential income. So that is if every single opportunity that's in my pipeline right now closes, this is how much I'm going to make in gross commission. The probable income is sadly much less and sadly more accurate, and this is using a probability percentage to calculate an adjusted commission because the person who might want to sell next year that you're putting into cultivate, you're much less likely to be paid on that transaction than you are with the listing that you just got an accepted offer on that you just moved to under contract. Of course, the probability of you closing that deal is much higher because you're closer to that end goal. And so as you move your transactions and your opportunities through this pipeline, you're going to see these numbers over here change. So let's go ahead and create an opportunity, and then I'll show you how to move it through the pipeline and track all of those things that I mentioned. So once this pops up, Market Center will always be filled in with Keller Williams Select Realty. The only time this will change is if you are licensed with more than one Market Center. If you are on a team, you will then see your team name here, and then the rainmaker of your team will show up as the owner. If that's the case, when you scroll to the bottom, you will also see an assignees field, which is what gives you access to the opportunity, and you can also add additional team members to this as well. So if you have an administrator on your team who needs access to your opportunities, just think later on this will be how you submit paperwork to the office. So if your admin needs access to your documents, or you're co-listing with someone on your team, or whatever the case is, you can add as many assignees from your team as you need to. I'm going to remove the team here just to run through this as an individual agent. So these will be grayed out for you if you are an individual agent. Next, we have opportunity type, and you're just going to choose whether they are selling a house or buying a house. Okay, we ignore landlord and tenant again, we don't do that here. So you're just choosing between listing and buyer. So I'm going to choose a listing. It's really important to note that you cannot change this once you choose the opportunity type. So if I create this as if it is a listing opportunity and it ends up that it's supposed to be a buyer opportunity, I am going to have to archive that opportunity and then recreate it. In the same breath, if you have a client who is a seller and you're listing their house, but then also helping them purchase a house, you're going to be creating two separate opportunities for that. Next, we have client. This is where you need to attach your contact. So it is important that the person you are transacting with is already in your database. Okay, so I can put in Joe Smith here. And then I'm just going to select the correct contact record like that. Okay, now what happens if you don't have them in your contacts yet? Well, they need to be added. So you can go and add them first and then create the opportunity. But if you're in this process and you're already in here creating the opportunity, maybe Jane Smith is, oh, I've already done that. If you don't have that person in your database already, it will prompt you down here to add a new contact. Next, we have opportunity name. So it does default to the name of the client and then the type of opportunity. Eventually, like I said, this will be how you submit paperwork to the office. So we do ask that you put the address in here if you know it. So if I knew this was going to be 1234 Main Street, I can fill that in. I can put whatever other details I want in the name. Some people put the client's name, some people put the expiry date of your agreements. Whatever you need to put in there to organize yourself, that is fine, as long as the address is there somewhere. Now, there are scenarios where you will not know the address when you're creating the opportunity, like if it's a potential transaction and you don't know what house they live in that they're going to sell, or if it's a buyer and they just haven't bought something yet, you're not going to know the address to put in here. So you can always leave it as it was, and then you can go back and edit it. Then we have tags, which, similar to your contacts, you can tag your opportunities to be able to sort and filter them. A lot of people use this to track the source of a transaction, so you might have a tag for referrals, or if you are on a specific sports team or in a club, you might want to create a tag for that. Any source that your business comes from, as long as you have tagged your opportunities with that tag, you can then search all of your opportunities to see how many transactions you have with that particular tag. Then we have estimated close date, and if you don't have an accepted offer on this transaction yet, you're not going to know what the closing date is going to be. And so you can leave this blank and come back and fill it in later. I will show you how to edit that. But once you do know what the closing date is going to be, it is extremely important to fill that in as the estimated close date. This is because every file that you submit to the office with documents in it gets reviewed by our brokers, and they're going to review them in order of estimated closing date. And so if you don't fill this in, it will never reach the top of that list. It always ends up at the bottom, and we're not going to know that your file needs to be reviewed until we get your check and it's not reviewed yet. So if you are submitting paperwork, please make sure to be filling that in. Then we have our time frame. So what's the time frame they're looking to sell? This is helpful if you are putting them into that cultivate phase. Just lets you keep track of how far out they're planning to buy or sell. Then we have estimated listing price. You, again, may not know this when you are filling this out. Same with your commission rate. but this is what's used to calculate that potential income that I mentioned. So you can leave the listing price blank. You do have to fill in the commission rate, but 2.5% of 0 is still 0, and so it's not going to calculate that potential income unless you're filling out both of these spots. Lastly, we have our opportunity phase. So that's referring to the pipeline. So are we cultivating this relationship, or do we already have an appointment with them, or is the listing already getting ready to be activated? You can choose between those first 3 pipeline stages or phases, to put that transaction into. So I'm going to put this into active. Then we have stages, which, like our phases, this is in the pipeline. However, it's breaking down each phase even further. So we're in our active opportunity phase, and then we have stages. So we can track as we're preparing the listing, publishing the listing, showing the listing, and then negotiating. Okay, so you're going to see this a bit more in a moment, but I'm just going to choose a random one here and create this opportunity, and then we'll take a look at the pipeline. Before I dive into the pipeline, once you create that opportunity, it's going to bring you to your details tab, which is where you can see all of that information for the opportunity that you just entered. You'll see these little pencil icons throughout Command, and those are how you can edit things. So when I click on this pencil, this opens back up, and now I can edit that opportunity as much as I need to. So I can change the opportunity name here. I can add an additional contact if I need to. I can change the phase and the stage, and I can also input my closing date. You have some other dates here which will help with your goal tracking, and then your price and commission are here and editable as well. So I'm going to click Sales Pipeline here in the top left just to bring us back to our pipeline. And then if you want to expand any of these specific phases, all you have to do is click on the icon for that phase. So I know that I put that opportunity directly into active, so I'm going to click on active. And then I know that I put it into the negotiation stage, and so here it is under negotiations. I can scroll to the side there. So I'm in my expanded view of the pipeline. Again, we see those 5 phases that I mentioned here at the top, and those you can't change. They are set in stone, but then you have these stages under each individual phase that you can edit. So in active, we have prepare listing, publish listing, showing, and then negotiations. You'll also see this percentage beside each one, which is showing you the probability of you closing that deal, and that's what's calculating that probable income. That can be edited as well, and I will show you how to do that. Down here under each stage, you will see these little cards, and those are for each opportunity, and this is what allows you to move the opportunity throughout the pipeline. So here I have my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Main Street. And if I want to move that, maybe I accidentally put it into negotiations, or the deal fell through and now we're back to showing, I can just click and drag this right over to showing. So on these little cards, you will see some information. You will have the name of the opportunity. You will have the client's name. You will also have the closing date, or the estimated closing date here if that's filled in. You can see it on this example over here on the left. And then you also have your estimated commission. You'll have these 3 dots on each card as well, which allows you to either open up and view the details of that opportunity, and then you can also archive the opportunity from here if it's something that does not need to be in your pipeline anymore. Lastly, on each card, you'll notice these little 2 of 3 icons, or 0 of 3, and these are checklists. So you can create your own checklists for your transactions based on each individual stage. So when you're preparing the listing, you can create a list of to-dos for yourself that remind you what you need to do every time you have a opportunity or transaction in that stage. So when I'm preparing the listing, if I click on this, it's going to tell me I need to book the stager and order the sign installer, both of which I've already checked off that I've done, and then to book the photographer. Now when I look at the checklist under publish listing, it's telling me I need to send my input form and documents to Michaela and email my photos to Michaela. Okay, so each stage can have its own checklist. You'll never need to guess what you're doing, and you'll never miss a step in your transaction. So to edit all of these things, the stages, the percentages, and the checklists, you just click on Edit Stages here at the top right. You'll see each of those stages that I mentioned here, their probabilities and their checklists, and you just click on the pencil beside each stage that you want to edit, which allows you to change the name and probability. To edit the checklist, you just click on the blue 0 of 0 or 0 of 3 items, which will bring up the existing list, and you can add items from here. Now, any future opportunities that I create and move into this stage will get the updated checklist. I can also add additional stages or remove stages if they're not relevant. So I'm going to head back to the pipeline now. So you can view this in two different ways. We're in the board view, which is showing you all the little cards for each opportunity. However, you can also view it in the list view, which still shows the same phases and stages. It's just in a list instead of individual cards. Again, I can still rearrange things this way, just a different view of it. So I'm going to click on the name of that opportunity to open it back up, which brings us right back into the details. So now that you know how to create an opportunity and track it through your pipeline, the next step is actually adding some documents in here and sending them into the office. So in tomorrow's video, we'll be looking at the Documents tab of this opportunity, how to connect your e-signature program so that it can automatically bring your documents into Command and upload those docs, send them into the office, and navigate the compliance and file review process. See you then!